Hello, ladies and gentlemen. The last video I recorded on this channel was my top 10 national teams that I am looking forward to watching in 2023. And obviously, I asked you guys in the comments, what were your national teams you're looking forward to watching, apart from your own nation? And you gave me a decent amount of shouts. So today is a follow-up video of my last video. I'm just going to be going over more underrated nations that you should be paying attention to in 2023. Although the World Cup's over, there's still a lot of international football to look forward to this year. So without any further ado, here is my list of 10 countries. Starting off at number 10, I have gone for Australia. As we all know, Australia have had a very solid run at the World Cup. Not many people predicted them to get out of their group, as many expected the top two spots to go to France and Denmark. But despite Australia getting a hefty blow to France at the beginning, they had a very solid World Cup for their standards. They got second place, beating Tunisia and Denmark, along with going to the round of 16s against the champions of the entire tournament, losing to them by just one goal, scoring against them as well. Australia have put off fantastic fights in this tournament, and it's really a sign of improvement as this side struggled so much in the World Cup qualifiers. They made it through, obviously, but they barely clinched that playoff spot, only 1 point in front of Oman. Then they were able to beat the UAE and beat Peru on penalties. This side clinched it till the end, and they obviously have that fighting spirit. I doubted this side heavily before the World Cup started. Graham Arnold didn't seem like the most promising manager. The fact that he barely just qualified really made me wonder how well this side could do, but clearly they're always fighting to the end. And with the AFC Asian Cup coming up this year, Australia definitely look like contenders to potentially win this, as they were amongst the 3 countries from Asia that qualified for the knockouts in the World Cup. The squad is filled with underrated players. Jamie McLaren, who plays in the A-League, yes, still has scored 12 goals for Melbourne City in 9 matches. Another Melbourne City player who I really didn't expect to do well. He used to play in Germany in the Bundesliga, but I thought he somewhat fell off. Matthew Leckie, who balled out against Denmark, scoring a beautiful goal. Aydin Hrustić has many clutch moments for the country as well, scoring that free kick against the UAE in the playoffs. Aaron Moy's name is still out there, currently on Celtic. Jackson Irvine appears to be that midfield glue for the team. What a warrior. I wasn't the only one who doubted Australia. A lot of criticism was thrown at them, even from their own citizens, that they probably weren't going to do bits at this World Cup, and they surprised everybody. So I think Australians very much have a reason to look forward to 2023. I'm not saying they're guaranteed favorites, but they're amongst them. Now at number 9, I've gone for Israel. Last time in their Euro qualifier group, I talked about Kosovo, who I said regardless if they qualify or not, have very much a solid shout at putting off some fantastic results in this qualifier run. I think potentially their biggest obstacle, apart from Switzerland obviously, and who knows, maybe Romania, will be Israel. Israel have actually had some very solid displays recently. They topped their Nations League group over Iceland and Albania, and in their World Cup qualifier group, yes, they didn't qualify, but they were over the likes of Austria. Israel received full UEFA membership in 1994, and to be honest, I really wasn't expecting this side to put off much of a fight, but they have very much improved within recent times. Within this decade of 2020, I'd say, even at club level, we've seen the likes of Maccabi Haifa really surprise us in the Champions League, for example. But yeah, I would definitely watch out for Israel, as they definitely have such a solid shout at qualifying for their first ever Euro tournament. Similar to Kosovo, this side randomly unifies beautifully, and their group in the Euro qualifiers is actually pretty doable. That's why I was saying Kosovo can actually have a shout at qualifying for their first ever Euros. It would be crazy to see which one is able to do it. It could be neither, obviously. It could end up being Romania, but I would definitely watch out for both Israel and Kosovo. And obviously in this video, I got to bring up Israel, as I brought up Kosovo last time. Best of luck to both these teams. It's going to be an interesting fight. Now at number 8, I've chosen Mali. Mali is such an underrated nation from Africa, you gotta say. They were this close to qualifying for their first ever World Cup. Unfortunately, they couldn't do it in the last playoff round against Tunisia, scoring an own goal against them, and that being the only difference maker. Not to mention, they had a very solid run in the Africa Cup of Nations last year as well, where they were undefeated in the group stage and then lost to Equatorial Guinea on penalties in the round of 16s. Mali at the moment in their Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers sit at first in their group, but it's definitely an interesting group where they're able to test themselves out. We saw Gambia have an incredible road in the Africa Cup of Nations last year themselves, and Congo could definitely put off an interesting fight. Not to mention the talent that Mali possesses in this current generation is actually very solid. They have a few players playing in France, including their right back Hamari Traore, a defensive mid option Mohamed Kamara Monaco, a 19-year-old attacking midfielder Doumbia, one of their center backs Kiki Koyate. Then they have quite a few players in the Prem. Bissouma on Tottenham, the most famous one, Cheikh Doucouré on Crystal Palace, Moussa Djenepo on Southampton. I'm not going to list their entire squad, but if you take a look at it, They actually have so many players playing in some top leagues in Europe. And obviously that doesn't define everything, but Mali's current generation of players definitely have what it takes to shine. And I could definitely see them qualifying for the next World Cup. Now at number 7, I've gone for Albania. Now, let's be real, Albania have had a terrible year in 2022. But now, this is their time to turn things around. Look at their Euro qualifier group. They have some obstacles in there for sure. Czech Republic and Poland already have that history to qualify for this tournament. So Albania's chances are not looking too bright, but they might be able to secure that playoff spot. This national team is feeling hopeful as they have just appointed a new manager after their dreadful year. The Brazilian manager Slovenia has just taken charge only a few days ago at the time of this recording. He's had history managing Corinthians, Lyon, an assistant manager for Brazil. Definitely his wisdom and experience can add a lot to the national team of Albania. They also have a few young talent emerging to the scene. Many people know about Broja on Chelsea, who unfortunately suffered a hefty injury and won't be returning till June. But they still got Aslani, the center defensive mid on Inter Milan. A lot of people are not expecting much from Albania this year. And who knows, they still could crash in these Euro qualifiers. However, I wouldn't rule this side out and I would still pay attention to them, as they can surprise many people for sure. Now, next up in my list has got to be Ecuador. Ecuador, despite getting knocked out in the group stage of the World Cup, actually had a very solid display. They were off to a phenomenal start, winning the home match against the host nation, picking up a point against Netherlands, one of the best teams in Europe, and then unfortunately they lost to Senegal head-to-head, which is what halted them to qualify for the knockouts. If they got at least a draw in that match, they would have been through. For me, Ecuador are one of the best sides to watch in the World Cup that failed to qualify for the knockouts. Their captain, Enner Valencia, had a phenomenal display and unfortunately got injured in this tournament. He is one of the oldest players in the squad. Apart from him and a few others, this is a very young generation of talent that only can improve over the years. We're only going to see more of the likes of Moises Caicedo from Brighton, Hincapié on Bayer Leverkusen, Gonzalo Plata, plus so many more. These players are just getting started. In fact, the World Cup qualifiers for 2026 start first for South America. They're already going to be starting their World Cup qualifier campaign in 2023. From my knowledge, that is not the case from any other region in the world. So we're already going to be seeing Ecuador's conquest to qualify for the next World Cup, and the fact that there's going to be a lot more teams participating in the next World Cup, which will take the pressure off Ecuador. But we got to keep in mind, even if there was much pressure, they handled it brilliantly last time around. Although many are heartbroken about Ecuador's results, not qualifying for the knockouts, I do think that the Ecuadorian fans have every reason to stay hopeful in their country. Now at number 5, I have gone for South Korea. South Korea, as we saw, went through a roller coaster at the World Cup, but pulled through at the very end of the group stage against Portugal. They then got a hefty loss to Brazil, but scored a wonder goal in the process. And just like Australia, they really have every reason to be confident for the AFC Asian Cup coming up. It's been a very long time since they have won the tournament. They won the first 2 since the creation. Min Jae Kim has been one of the best signings for Napoli, along with Kvicha, obviously. Fantastic center back and can definitely hold his own to frustrate many teams. Heung-min Son, their best player, obviously will never go unnoticed. And then Hwang Hee-chan just brings this side glory. We saw it against Portugal. All right, now I'm moving fast with that one, but let's move on to number 4, Luxembourg. Again, with these Euro qualifiers, man, they are in a very interesting group, and Luxembourg have put off some fantastic fights within the past year or two. Against the big teams, they're usually frustrated. And just like the World Cup qualifiers, they're going to have to come up against Portugal once again. But when it's a side that's obviously more well-known than Luxembourg, but still isn't proven to be that top team, they have potential to do wonders. They've beaten Ireland, they've beaten Azerbaijan, and they drew with Turkey 3-3. This side puts up fights, I'm telling you. And it truly looks like within the past 2 years, this side has been building some kind of momentum. So I'm really curious to see what they can do against the likes of Iceland, who have seemed to be struggling recently, Slovakia, who recently have been bottling it to underdogs. They definitely have what it takes to beat Liechtenstein. Bosnia might be a tough test, but again, anything's possible. I really wouldn't be surprised if Luxembourg can at least get a playoff spot in this group. Watch them shock the likes of Slovakia at least once. Now, at number 3, I've picked Mexico. Now, why have I gone with Mexico? Obviously, they're one of the more well-known teams around the world. Of course, they make the World Cup so special with their incredible fan base. But why I'm saying you should watch out for Mexico, because they have gotten the weight off of their shoulders of Tata Martino, who many Mexico fans were not happy with whatsoever. From my knowledge, and I'm sorry if I'm wrong on this or you watch this video later, they haven't appointed anyone new yet. But with Mexico getting very unlucky in the fashion they got knocked out of the World Cup in, on goal differential against Poland. With the talent this side have, they have potential to win trophies this year. The CONCACAF Nations League and the Gold Cup is what I'm specifically looking at. They fell short to the USA too many times last time around. But now this is definitely their chance to go back to their glory days in at least CONCACAF. Obviously, Mexico will not have to go through the World Cup qualifiers since they are co-hosts, but that's a topic for another year. We're not worrying about that just yet anyway, and they have plenty of time to work their way up to do well at that World Cup. Potentially break that round of 16 barrier that they have always seemed to struggle with in the past many years, apart from this one, unfortunately, because they got knocked out earlier. But that's besides the point. This is basically a new timeline where Mexico can work their way to be better in the future. That's why I'm saying you should start watching their progress this year. Now at number 2, I'm choosing Slovenia. Slovenia have had many fixtures where they seem to fall short, despite randomly putting off a good fight here or there. But in this last Nations League campaign, and I would say the most difficult group in League B, they had some impressive results at the end. We got to see their young wonder kid ball out, Šeško. He's definitely one for the future and can definitely build momentum into this coming year. In this Euro qualifier group, I've used this claim many times. It's looking somewhat doable for them. This group looks easy on the surface, but I would say it's probably the toughest one to predict. Denmark looked like clear favorites to get first, but at this point, who knows based on their World Cup. Besides San Marino, I really think it's a gamble for any of them to qualify for the Euros. But I definitely could see Slovenia putting off interesting results regardless. As like I mentioned, Šeško has been balling out. They have one of the best keepers in the world who does look to be somewhat slowing down this year, but you still can't ignore what he's done over the years, Jan Oblak. Unfortunately, Ilicic has fallen off a bit, who was once a serious baller for this country. But still, there are many underrated players playing for perhaps more low-key clubs in Europe, which is why their name isn't out there as much. For example, Stojanovic on Empoli is a remarkable right-back for the country. Whether or not this country qualifies for Euro 2024 or not, something tells me they will have impressive waves of form in 2023. But then for my number 1 team in this video, I'm going with Norway. Last time I went about Georgia and how they can definitely be a threat in their qualifier group, as Norway always seemed to really bottle it at the end. We saw it in the World Cup qualifiers and the Nations League. And although it could easily happen again, the quality Norway possess is just too much for us to ignore them. Yes, Spain look like the favorites in this group, but with what Norway have, they should be qualifying for the Euros. Obviously, Erling Haaland has been one of the best strikers in the world, breaking records in the Premier League his first half of the season. Odegaard has been phenomenal for Arsenal as well. Elyonusi, Solat, Solbakken. Lots of young talent as well that's emerging into the scene from Norway that very much could be excelling within this year. It will be a very interesting fight to this tournament, and we shouldn't count out Scotland as well. Apart from Spain qualifying, obviously, I think it's very much going to be a toss-up between those 3 countries, Norway, Scotland, and Georgia. I wouldn't say they're the most underrated side anymore, as they're getting a lot more spotlight with the likes of Erling Haaland, who could definitely have more international success if he was on such a strong squad like Mbappe was. I'm not trying to start a debate between the two, and although Norway's quality does not match up compared to France's, they definitely are on somewhat of a rise. They very much could turn things around and break these supposed curses that they've been creating themselves this year. So yeah, guys, that is my complete list of the top 10 underrated teams to watch in 2023. Again, if you missed your team, make sure you check out my other video, top 10 countries to watch in 2023. You might see it there. And if not, let me know which countries I forgot about once again. But yeah, guys, of course, like I said, this year has a lot of football we got to look forward to. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're not already. And I will see you all very soon. Take care. Laku noć.